Helping people understand history and how it keeps repeating itself. The brainwashing of people, we're here to unhypnotize. Open your eyes and mind. See how you can be the change. Topics included chaos, or Plato, or allegory of the cave. Montauk Project, Mandela effect, the problem with using labels, and other topics that are considered conspiracy theories.
Hello, and welcome to Back to Light. We hope everyone had a meaningful Memorial Day weekend as we continue to honor our fallen heroes. The weekend may be over, but we must always remember and keep our fallen heroes and their families in our hearts, honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Tonight, we're discussing PTSD, but we're approaching it a little differently than the usual conversation. While we hold deep respect for the men and women who serve and carry the heavy burden of combat-related PTSD, we also want to shine light on the fact that trauma doesn't only happen on the battlefield. Abusive relationships, prolonged financial strain, the sudden or complicated loss of a loved one, and many other painful experiences can also cause PTSD. Tonight, we want to honor everyone who is quietly carrying the weight of trauma, whatever its source, and remind them that their pain is valid and they are not alone. This topic is heavy, but important. We're going to talk about the long shadow that overwhelming experiences can cast, not just on individuals, but on entire populations. From relationship abuse to war fatigue within this informational and spiritual war, we're exploring what happens when trauma becomes collective. When the fight goes on for so long that people begin deciding, have I had enough? We'll have a better understanding why sometimes they never return to the field. This isn't just about a diagnosis or symptoms. It's about what happens to the human spirit when it's been under pressure for years. And now I present Article 12. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is the long-term impact of overwhelming experiences. It occurs when an event exceeds the ability of the individual to process, integrate, and move forward. Although PTSD is often linked to war veterans or incidents of extreme violence, its effects extend well beyond the battlefield. It can arise from any situation that disrupts the sense of safety, stability, or identity, whether socially, emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually. Commonly cited triggers include war, natural disasters, accidents, terrorism, sexual assault, and abuse. Yet, this narrow view often obscures the broader truth that trauma is subjective. The loss of a job, prolonged isolation, a breakdown of family structure, chronic illness, or the death of a beloved pet can all leave lasting psychological imprints. What matters is not whether an event meets an external threshold of severity, but whether it overwhelms the internal world of the individual. PTSD typically manifests in 4 ways. Intrusion involves the re-experiencing of the event through flashbacks or nightmares, where the past resurfaces. Avoidance reflects an attempt to steer clear of reminders like places, people, or even thoughts that might reactivate the wound. Alterations in cognition and mood include persistent negative beliefs, memory gaps, self-blame, anxiety, and depression. Finally, heightened arousal presents as irritability, insomnia, hypervigilance, or reckless behavior. These symptoms are adaptive responses that have outlived their original purpose. At the neurological level, trauma disrupts normal brain function. The amygdala, responsible for threat detection, becomes overactive, while the prefrontal cortex, which is tasked with reasoning and regulation, can become less effective. The hippocampus, which helps distinguish past from present, may also be impaired. The result is a system that struggles to recognize that the danger has passed. The body, flooded with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, remains in a prolonged state of alert. Each trigger reactivates this loop, reinforcing the circuitry of fear. This can lead to exhaustion and deplete vitality. Conventional responses to PTSD frequently lean towards symptom management, such as therapy protocols, diagnostic frameworks, and medication. While these can offer relief, they can also reduce complex human experiences into manageable categories, overlooking the deeper context in which trauma occurs. When individuals feel unheard or minimized, the sense of fragmentation can deepen rather than resolve. This becomes particularly relevant when considering collective trauma. Events such as the September 11 attacks or the upheaval of the COVID-19 pandemic were not experienced in isolation. They were broadcast, repeated, and embedded into daily consciousness. Earlier events like Pearl Harbor or the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings demonstrate how trauma can echo across generations, shaping collective memory and identity. Collective trauma can unify, but it can also condition. Repeated crises can dull emotional response, normalize instability, and lower the threshold of what is acceptable. Over time, resilience weakens while dependence on external structures grow. Regardless of individual perspective, the world population has undergone a sustained period of uncertainty, fear, and disruption. People have adapted in different ways, with some becoming more resilient, others more withdrawn, many experiencing the undercurrent of unease. The question is not whether change has occurred, but how deeply it has taken root. If trauma can shape perception, behavior, and belief, how much of what we think and feel today is truly our own? Have repeated crises strengthened discernment, or have they conditioned compliance? Are we recognizing our responses as adaptive signals, or mistaking them for fixed truths? And perhaps, most importantly, if awareness is the first step in unraveling these patterns, are we willing to confront what that awareness might reveal?
When people think about post-traumatic stress disorder, they think about a war veteran, but the truth is PTSD can affect anyone following a traumatic event or experience. One common way PTSD can manifest is through intimate partner violence. IPV includes any behavior within an intimate relationship that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm, including acts of physical aggression, sexual coercion, psychological abuse, controlling behaviors, and even financial abuse. Research shows that PTSD and IPV almost always go hand in hand, and sometimes symptoms are often overlooked or underreported due to stigma or fear. Living with PTSD can be incredibly difficult, but with counseling and medical support, people can learn to manage their symptoms and start to move forward. Remember, you're not alone in this.
Losing a pet can be devastating. For many people, it's like losing a family member, which is why One Valley organization is creating a space for pet owners to be able to grieve together. Janet Dewey is the director of equine programs and a licensed therapist at the Meadows Behavioral Health Care. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I mean, it's just one of the greatest sadness that we live when the joys of an animal and then to lose that animal.
Yes.
Why does it hit us so hard?
Yes, and it really isn't about the loss that makes it different. A loss is a loss, whether it's human or non-human, and I'm really glad to see there are more studies showing that. It's about the attachment to the animal that creates that grief process. The difference is this is a grief called a disenfranchised grief, and so what that means is it's not readily accepted by society. So that's where the shame can come in of why am I mourning for so long, and that's the key difference.
So we should release that,
Yes.
release any shame that has to do with it. We loved it, now we're missing it. It's that love that's still existing without that animal or that person or that attachment there.
Yes, a place where they can come and talk about that shame and the grief and the pain without judgment, and instead receive that acceptance.
How are the horses involved with the healing? They're used so much with human healing.
And so the horses come into play because they are authentic, they're honest, and they show up and they see us as how we show up. They don't ask questions about how was yesterday, how was last week. They just see how we're feeling. So when we show shame, grief, pain, they respond to that, not just everything else that us humans kind of take with it.
Accept you as you are. And if you are mourning the loss of an animal, release that shame.
Yes.
It's just that love you experience that you're missing.
Yes,
Discussing.
absolutely.
Janet, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone knows someone that either is or was in the military. Grandparents, parents, brothers, sisters, friends. And I'm sure you can visualize them as I speak. The soldier behind me on the screen is just that, me. I'm what's known as a veteran. And America has millions of veterans who proudly serve their country. What you may not know is 20% of these veterans have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I personally think that number is higher simply because many veterans never talk about PTSD or whether or not they suffer from it. I was one of these veterans. I was fine. I didn't talk about it. I buried it deep down inside, and only I knew what I did, what mistakes I made, what I saw, heard, or smelled. I told myself I couldn't possibly have PTSD because I volunteered for the Army. Actually, a judge encouraged me to enlist, but that's a story for when we have more time. The military did a fantastic job training me to be an emotionless, paranoid killer, capable of doing great and terrible things, jumping out of airplanes, blowing stuff up. The only thing I had to worry about was the enemy, and the enemy could be anyone or anything, anywhere, at any time. I had to be careful where I walked or stepped, keeping an eye on doors, windows, roofs, vehicles, because the enemy is out there waiting to kill me. So how did I deal with this? Hypervigilance. It's where all your senses are operating at full speed, collecting data and visuals. And to a degree, you even learn to use your intuition. There is no training to turn this off. So back home, I was just as alert as I ever was over there. In restaurants, I'd sit facing the entrance, having already scanned the room to get a baseline of threats. I've identified all the improvised weapons near me and how I would react to the various ambush scenarios in my mind. Now let's have dinner. Notice I didn't say let's enjoy dinner. There's not a lot of joy in a veteran's life with PTSD. However, hypervigilance was just part of my PTSD. Nightmares kept me up most of the night, which kept me exhausted. I would relive the events throughout the day in my mind, raising my heart rate, anxiety, and blood pressure. This would often then leave me very agitated, angry, or distant. Not very fun to be around for long periods of time, which is why I chose to be alone a lot. It was easier that way. In large groups such as this, I feel like a target because I cannot control the situation. My anxiety level is high because I am alone. Even up here in front of all of you, or sitting next to family and friends, I feel alone. You see, back in the day, I had my brothers with me, and they were just as alert and well-armed as I was. We were in it together. Brothers till you fall. And fall, some of them did. But no one gets left behind, we'd say, if that's supposed to help. There was strength in numbers, and now I'm by myself waiting on a fight that never comes. As a veteran, I'm haunted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by my PTSD. Loud noises, car accidents, or any number of triggers causes me to relive those days again. Exhausted, the experience seems so vivid, only confusing things further. Being trained to expect the unexpected with no way to turn off the obsession left me emotionally numb. Exhaustion. Well, that's standard government issue in the military, along with fatigues and a rifle. Typically, though, I'm just as exhausted back home as I ever was over there. Being so tired makes thinking and good decisions very hard to do, leaving you looking for any type of relief. Sadly, the easiest thing to obtain is alcohol, and I found myself drinking alcohol before bed in the hopes of getting a few hours of sleep. A doctor once did a cortisol test on me, and she was shocked to find that my highest levels of stress were in the hours before bed. This did not shock me, however, because if you think about it, I was trained to believe that someone is always trying to kill me. So feeling alone and closing my eyes is not an easy thing to do. And when this goes on long enough, my body started to break down due to my stress, exhaustion, and bad habits. Stress-related illnesses like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel brought me physical pain to go along with my emotional pain that I pretended did not exist. I've had shingles 17 times. Some of you know that intense pain, and you'll know most people get it once or twice, but not me. In August of 2011, my body started to break down in a really bad way. The VA did a massive workup on me to try to figure out what was going on. It hurt to walk, move, sleep, or think. I had lost interest in living if I was going to live like this, and I was okay with dying. I truly was considering immortality because I wanted the pain to end one way or another. The shocking part to this, it was easy to have these thoughts. In fact, America has an ongoing veteran suicide crisis where 22 soldiers, 22 veterans, will commit suicide today. 22 veterans will commit suicide tomorrow, and each day, over 8,000 veterans a year. I have known some of them. And while I don't know what that final thing was that put them over the edge, I can imagine it's not very different from my story. This cycle has to end. And it seems society is concerned about veteran suicide awareness, but with no solutions. Think about it this way. If 22 soldiers were killed today, it would be all over the news, and the public would be calling for airstrikes and retaliation. It's easy to see how a veteran can feel alone and forgotten when he goes to the VA with PTSD and all he gets is pills to numb the pain. However, I was lucky enough to see any type of doctor I could afford. Western, Eastern, Indian, alternative medicine. And I will tell you what I found that helped me the most. It's simple, really. In February of 2015, I went to a holistic medical retreat to try to see if I could reset my body path using an ancient Indian way of medicine called Ayurveda. And part of this seminar was regular yoga and meditation sessions. And being me, I was extremely apprehensive about doing such activities. But I was looking for any type of relief. And so I bought the biggest yoga mat I could find and tried as hard as I could. The results are just that funny. Most people were stretching and enjoying the workout, and I'm in the corner having visions of Braveheart sweating and moaning. Inside, I felt meditation might be another failure. But during my first guided meditation, something dramatic happened. I felt my body actually relax. And I was in a place between thoughts. My mind quieted, and it felt really good. I was able to see and process my memories for being just that, memories. As the session ended, I sobbed because I had no idea what was happening to my body. But I knew that I wanted that feeling back. And so I meditated again before bed, fell asleep during the session, slept hard, no nightmares even, and woke up actually feeling refreshed. Back home, I continued my meditation and things continued to improve. Others noticed a difference in my attitude and demeanor at work and asked what changed. My answer? Meditation. Intrigued by my progress, I decided to do some research on PTSD and meditation and found several recent medical studies confirming what my heart already knew. Meditation lowers stress and anxiety levels, improves immune function, and lowers heart rate and blood pressure. Upon conclusion of one of these studies, veterans confirmed that they were continuing to practice daily meditation and reported feeling calmer, less stressed, deeply rested, and finally more engaged in their daily lives and family. Encouraged by these reports, I saw a huge opportunity to help veterans with PTSD. So in keeping with the soldier's mantra, no one gets left behind. 8 months ago, I started a nonprofit to raise money and send veterans with PTSD to learn and practice meditation like I have. And this is where I need your help. Will you help me find these brave men and women? Encourage them to contact us, because 1 month ago, in early October, we had 5 veterans come together from across the country and go through an all-expenses-paid 4-day meditation seminar. And the results were truly life-changing. Words will not do justice to what happened. They were relaxed. They were smiling. They were joking. sleeping without medication, and starting to enjoy their life again. Now, the best part about this is we've raised enough money to send 10 more veterans very soon, but our work has just begun. With your help, we will continue to raise awareness so that any veteran with PTSD can find peace from the haunting scars of war. Thank you.
So as you can see, it's not just one way we experience PTSD, but when something overwhelms our ability to process it, the mind and body do not just bounce back. They adapt in ways that can last long after the event itself is over. The nervous system stays primed for danger long after the danger has passed. What was once a protective response becomes a default setting. Hypervigilance, emotional numbness, a constant low hum of unease that colors everything. On a collective level, this creates something even more complex. When an entire population goes through prolonged uncertainty, the effects don't stay isolated. They ripple outward. People start sharing the same baseline anxiety, the same shortened fuse, the same difficulty imagining a stable future. Trust erodes, hope becomes harder to hold. Even small stressors can feel overwhelming because the internal reserves have been depleted. What's particularly interesting is how invisible this can feel while it's happening. Many people don't label it as trauma. They just know they're tired, they're on edge, they're withdrawing. Or they're pushing harder than ever because stopping feels scarier than continuing. This state becomes the new normal, and after a while, people forget there was another way to be. Some people break through the fog and see things with new clarity. Others reach a point where they simply can't engage anymore. They've seen too much, felt too much, and the cost of staying in the fight outweighs the perceived benefit. They step back, not out of weakness, but out of self-preservation. And unlike soldiers who were ordered to rest and decompress between battles, in this informational and spiritual war, the decision to step away is entirely personal. Some forget this. That is why it is important to unplug from the constant news and data being thrown at us daily, and to recharge yourself. Whether you decide to come back and fight again another day is entirely up to you. This doesn't only happen in war zones or large-scale disasters. It happens in abusive relationships every single day. Living with someone who constantly criticizes, gaslights, controls, or erupts in rage creates a slow, grinding trauma. The person walking on eggshells learns to shrink themselves, to anticipate moods, to doubt their own reality. Over time, their nervous system stays in survival mode, even when the immediate threat isn't there. Many survivors describe feeling like they're still waiting for the next explosion long after they left their relationship. They often need years to rebuild their sense of reality and trust, and some never fully recover. The psychological pattern is clear. Prolonged exposure without adequate processing leads to exhaustion of the spirit. History is full of moments where collective trauma left lasting marks on entire societies. After World War I, from 1914 to 1918, millions of soldiers returned home carrying what was then called shell shock. Society struggled to reintegrate them. The Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 to 1919, which killed an estimated 50 million people, layered even more collective grief onto an already traumatized world. Following World War II, entire nations had to rebuild, not just physically, but psychologically. The Holocaust and the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 left deep generational scars. These examples show how large-scale trauma doesn't end when the conflict does. It lingers in the collective nervous system of a people for generations. We're living through something similar right now. The last several years have delivered a sustained barrage of disruption. We have political upheaval, economic pressure, social division, and constant informational, psychological, and spiritual warfare. Many people describe a deep exhaustion that goes beyond normal tiredness. They call it war fatigue, even though they've never put on a uniform. The constant demand to stay informed, stay outraged, stay on the right side, or simply stay functional has worn down millions. Some have experienced this through what's called the Great Awakening, a breaking through of old narratives into new awareness. While others have reached their limit, they've stopped doom scrolling, stopped arguing online, stopped trying to convince others, stopped sharing their experiences and thoughts. They've quietly stepped back from the fight, choosing peace over perpetual engagement. For them, the cost of staying in the arena became too high. They have chosen to protect their inner world instead. This individual decision point is significant. In today's environment, the choice to step away is entirely up to you. No one is there to tell you or to demand that you do so. You need to be aware of the effects that this is having on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And realize that even if you take a pause just for a moment, you can allow your brain to catch up with the processing of all that you've been living through. You can become conscious of your environment and perhaps the long-term damage you may be enduring by staying in the state too long. Have you felt that exhaustion? That sense that you've been carrying too much for too long? Maybe you've noticed yourself pulling back, or maybe you're just still pushing forward while wondering how much longer you can keep going. This is where the personal truth lives. The real question each of us faces is simple but hard. Where am I right now, and why? There's a lot to carry from everything we've talked about tonight. Collective trauma leaves real marks. It changes how we see the world, how we trust, and how we show up. Real healing often starts with small, consistent choices, creating space for rest, setting boundaries with information, rebuilding connection in real life, and being gentle with ourselves when we need to take a step back. Some days, that means turning off the feed. Other days, it means having an honest conversation with people that we love. Practices like meditation and mindfulness have also shown real promise, helping not only soldiers, but many others reduce the intensity of PTSD symptoms, calm the nervous system, and gradually rebuild the sense of safety and presence. Over time, these small acts can help restore what constant pressure has worn down.
It was after we got back. It probably wasn't for like about a year that I started thinking about what actually happened. Yeah, and how it affected me.
When I came back, I really just didn't feel a part of society, or I just self-medicate, through drinking and isolation. It's a difficult process, it's just, you just have to deal with it as best as you can. And, through drinking, I guess, I dealt with what I saw over there.
As a medical professional, you're used to seeing injuries and such, but there is something special about young American service personnel that are seriously maimed or killed, and you are able to maintain some professional distance, but still there's a wear and tear factor that can get to you.
And every day I would have a little bit of each feeling of being pretty much in the war still, I guess, in the back of my mind. going into places and looking at everybody and assessing who might be a threat. Driving, I remember the first time I stopped at the intersection where I would stop at after I leave my house. I got extremely paranoid because it was dark. I was in my car and I was stopped. So that means I'm a sitting target. At first, the only thing I couldn't wait to do was meditate, because that meant I would not be stressed out at least for 20 minutes. Nothing would bother me. And I went from looking forward to only meditating to, well, now tomorrow I have the whole day to feel like angst-free.
I think the TM has helped contribute to resilience and strength and some internal hardiness that enables you to maintain your own internal stability without becoming emotionally numb and unable to relate to the people, the casualties as individuals and persons.
The stresses and the things that got you anxious and a little bit hyped up is still there. You could talk about it. You can take the drugs. You can, get away from the combat environment and get into a different environment. But that still doesn't relieve the fact that, you still carry around that trauma, you still carry around that stress. And, from experience, I just think TM will allow somebody to find that peace and to release that stress.
I like the way it is now, and I want to keep it this way, which is good. Because like I said, for the last 5 years, I didn't want it this way. I could tolerate it, but I didn't want to be the way I was. And that's what TM's done for me. And that's what I could say to everybody. If you want to be the way you are, do some TM. And then, go ahead and live again.
The path forward isn't about denying what we've been through. It's about acknowledging it honestly and choosing day by day how we want to carry it or not. So, knowing everything you've lived through these last several years, are you still fighting the same battles because they matter, or because you've forgotten how to stop? And what if you took that moment to meditate and go inward and calm the mind? How much could your life change? I would love to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments or continue the conversation with us on Telegram. The link is in the description, along with our show affiliates. Go to backtolight.live for your copy of my ebook, Liberate Your Mind, a spiritual declaration of freedom. And as always, a huge thank you to the Back to Light crew. Carrie, our producer, Claudia, our mod, and Todd, our songwriter. I appreciate you all. And to you, our listeners, thank you for opening your mind and sharing with loved ones. We'll see you again next week for Article 13, Truth Bias. And remember, every story we believe shapes our reality. Stay curious and don't be afraid to question the narrative.
Only after the truth has come about, it walks into the room with lies thrown throughout. Can the minds of the sleeping and the lying about awake from their slumber to stumble on out of the mind control that has placed them inside rooms of deception the human brain provides. No place for logic in these darkened rooms. Common sense lost within the vacuum of construes, leaving no hope for rescue in this lying state. Rooms piling high with just more of the same. Unless of course the light of truth, like the break of day, finds its way through the service for the mind.